Rumination leads to worry. Worry leads to catastrophizing what's not going to happen, which ends up manifesting your worst realities coming true. That is the power of the brain. Friends, choose a coach and not a critic. Do you hear voices? What are they telling you? Do those voices sound like a critic or a coach? Oh, we're going there. You're like, wait a minute. What do you mean hearing voices? Yes. Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, where we help empower 7-figure founders to scale their business to 8 figures. And today we are going to be talking about the inner voices that sometimes dictate our lives. Okay. So this podcast episode is basically on the back of me being a total bookworm and doing a lot of work. I do love good fiction. Oh, I love a good fiction book, but I also make sure that I'm tethering it by other things that are going to develop me for peak performance. One of those books is The Untethered Soul. Y'all, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's rated 4.7 stars on Amazon, and it has like 34,000 reviews. It's been published over like 3 or 4 million books. Pretty incredible. The second book has been Chatter, The Voice in Our Head, Why It Matters, and How to Harness It by Kross. And so this book, most people would say it's a little bit woo. And maybe it could be, but I found it really great at understanding myself as a human, myself as the soul, or sometimes the words that we say to ourselves. But for now, let's focus on Chatter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a breakdown of what I learned in Chatter, but through the lens of being an entrepreneur. So this is me saying, get the book, but if you want the code as viewed through the eyes and minds of a business owner, this is going to be the episode for you. Okay, so I want to use this to contextualize how we can find a better voice. And sometimes on the pod, I'll say things like, I'm going to choose a better story. Essentially, what voice am I going to listen to? And as entrepreneurs, there's plenty of voices vying for our attention. And if you wonder why you talk to yourself, if you wonder if your self-talk is toxic or why it might be, if you are looking for the number one way to ease your anxious thoughts, you are in the right place. So the first thing is, if you experience worry, if you experience what Kross calls worry rumination, thinking about everything that could go wrong all the time, you're normal. And this is normal. Okay, so we evolved to experience things like worry, anxiety, and negative emotions for a reason. Now, the goal of when we experience worry, anxiety, negative emotions is to grow from those negative emotions. It's for us to appreciate when things are not negative. It's for us to expand as humans. That's going to be the start of the book. So if you experience anxiety, you're normal. But from my perspective as an entrepreneur, we experience a lot of anxieties in a lot of different ways. So how do we get back to a really great functioning place? How do we keep ourselves a priority? How do we, even when we get knocked down, how are we getting back up to our normal state of functioning so that we continue to evolve? Now, for years, the track in my mind was, why did I do that? Why didn't I make a different decision? Why are you so stupid? You're an idiot. Why haven't you learned this already? That was the voice in my mind for years and years and years. And then I wondered why I struggled so much with anxiety and depression. My gosh, if I walked around and I followed somebody that I cared for and I said that again and again, you're such an idiot. Why didn't you learn? Why didn't you make a different decision? Why aren't you moving faster? Why is somebody else doing the other things? That person would totally be depressed as well. That person would say, excuse me, I don't need you in my life. And I wasn't willing to divorce the negative voices in my mind because listen, it's weird. I actually thought that the negativity was pushing me forward. I felt like the negativity was making me better. I felt like the negativity was like a drill sergeant in my mind to be like, get down and give me 50. And I was like, yes, sir, I'll do another 50. And I just beat myself up thinking I'm beating myself into submission, beating myself into this version of perfection. That only works for so long. And it only works until you burn yourself out. So every situation in my business, I look back and I would say like, what if? What if I had done things differently? What if I got a different result? And when I look back and only said, what if, it kept me small. I only would do things where I was guaranteed to win, which was truncating my expansion. If I was only playing games that I could win, I was never understanding the value of playing games that made me stronger in the long run. And when I was always looking back and wondering what if, it kept me in a loop of never enough. Like, you'll never have enough time. You're not going to have enough money. You'll never have enough success. And that's what those voices of anxiety were doing for me. And over the years, I I would say I was like the valedictorian of overthinking, right? I was the valedictorian of beating myself up. And now I simply say, I'm just going to be a detective. I'm going to search for clues that lead to my success. That's it. Can I find clues? Can I learn from my lessons? What's going to get me to success faster? Now, if you want to get clues for your success, this episode will help you because you're going to turn your inner critic into an inner coach. You're going to give you tools to pull you out of that worry complex, and it's going to move you from anxiety into action. Now, when I say Dr. Ethan, maybe somebody would call him Ethan or Dr. Kross. I like Dr. Ethan because it makes him professional and friendly. So Dr. Ethan uses the word self-talk. That sometimes when we might say like the inner voice or what are you hearing in your head? So self-talk. And it means that you are using the ability of a silent language to reflect on our lives. This is a language that only we hear ourselves. So your inner voice is like a Swiss Army knife, and it's going to help you in four main ways. Now, please understand that I'm using his book as this framework. I did not make up these frameworks. This man is a professor at the University of Michigan. He is so brilliant, and he's a very strong writer. So I'm just going to give you the distilled version through the lens of an entrepreneur. So your inner voice is going to help you in four main ways. Number one, memorizing. We have an inner voice, like back in the day when, this is before cell phones, but when somebody would say, oh, my number is 949-267-1102. What would you do? You'd bring out a pen, but you're repeating it to yourself. 949-001-0012, 949-00. That's your inner voice. That's helping you. How you memorize is by repeating. Amazing. What a powerful thing that it is. Number two, we simulate. We simulate. In our mind, if we have to give a presentation at work, if we have to give a speech at school, if we have to have a conversation with our partner, this inner voice helps us with simulation. How might I sound? How could I say it better? How can I make this person feel heard or seen? Simulation. The third way that their inner voice helps you is by control and motivate. Have you ever been doing a workout and it absolutely sucks? And you're like, I can't do this other rep. And you'll say, come on, let's go, Jasmine. You could do it. One more. I always say, last one, best one. Let's go, let's go, let's go. That's what your inner voice is. Nobody else in the gym is hearing you talk to yourself, but that's a powerful thing, is to control and motivate. And lastly, your inner voice, how it's helpful, is that it helps us make sense of a messy world. Those were Dr. Ethan's worlds. So we get into arguments, we get rejected, we get embarrassed, and the inner voice helps us make sense and control things. It's like we're having a conversation to help us move past the uncertainty. Now, your inner voice helps you do everything from memorize a phone number to make sense of the world. It's pretty dang powerful. Now let's look at this through the lens of an entrepreneur. So we use this voice when we're struggling, but sometimes we don't know how to use this voice. Like, how is this voice going to help us get a solution? How do we have the voices that go in our mind hype us up instead of tear us down? How do we use this inner critic who's always saying, are you doing enough? Can it be better? Are you moving fast enough? And instead have a voice that helps us memorize, simulate, controls, and motivates. When we understand how this inner voice works, we could use it to our advantage. So what happens is, specifically with entrepreneurs, is it's easy for the inner voice to catastrophize. It's going to come up with the worst case scenario, and then it's going to stay what he calls the negative loop. You just keep on repeating the worst case scenario. This will be the last client you ever book. This last client that was really disappointed that says they're going to leave you a negative review, it's going to be the end of your business. And then we stay there and we can't bounce back. Well, what we want is, when we're in that loop of self-beratement, it makes it hard to think or act. So I want us to pause here. When we feel anxious and we're in a negative loop, and then we wonder, why are we stuck? Or why can't I find a better solution? Or I know I could figure that out if... Well, we have to first acknowledge we're in a negative loop, and then we have to find ways to remove ourselves out of it. Your self-talk voice got you in the lower loop, and your self-talk can bring you out of that loop. So at the end of 2020, I had hired a chief technology officer for Social Curator, and we hired our own development team for Social Curator. And it was the first time that I had done anything of this capacity. And I have to tell you, when we first did this, it was 2021, and we had built out the entire team. I was excited. I was elated. I was inspired. I literally was just like, oh my God, the world is my freaking oyster. And shortly thereafter, all of that turned into, I'm terrified, I'm panicked, and I am such a freaking idiot. What did I just get myself into? And when I was in this state of excitement and elation, anything was possible. The ideas were just firing 1,000 miles a minute. And then the minute that I slipped into not aware of it, the minute I slipped into anxiety, frustration, lack of knowing, like, what is everybody talking about? How does everybody know tech? And everyone's going to realize that I'm so stupid and I know nothing about tech. And guess what? They did. They accepted the job knowing that they were getting a job with a non-tech founder. I couldn't think. I kept on berating myself. It was that negative loop. And in order for me to get out of the loop, I actually had to realize that I was in it. I realized and I said, okay, all I'm doing is talking myself down and I'm not allowing myself to come up with a solution. And so I had to choose a new coach because the critic was too loud. And I said, if I wanted to get better, if I wanted to get a solution, what must I do? Take action. Did I know what action to take? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I just started Googling. I started asking questions. How do you learn how to start a SaaS company? Like, how do I be a SaaS founder? And one thing led to another, and I enrolled into something called the SaaS Academy that was teaching me. The minute I took action, I was able to get out of the negative loop and say, okay, I have work to do. And the work led me to hope. And the hope led me to clarity. And clarity led me to more action. And more action allowed me to really step into understanding how to build the business that I had never, ever experienced before. And that was powerful. That was how I got out of the loop. So there are three main forms that negative self-talk takes. Number one, rumination. What we do is we spend a lot of times thinking and rethinking about things we can't fix. They already happened. So when we stay in this state of rumination, we stay in the lower loop, we stay stuck, and all we do is repeat it. So we harm ourselves by doing this because Dr. Ethan says when we ruminate, it's very hard for us to think of solutions. When all we do is like, I wish it had been different. Why did it have been different? We can't think of a solution. And when we can't think of a solution, it makes us worry. And what happens when we worry? When we worry about the future, when we worry about what ifs, we already begin to manifest and catastrophize a future we're trying to avoid. Because that's all we're thinking about. We're thinking about everything that could go wrong. And so what do we end up doing? Focusing on the things that go wrong that actually turns out to be the very things that go wrong. So next thing you know, after all the things that go wrong, your life is over. Your dream is dead. I have to tell you, a few years ago, JD and I were sitting down, and I am telling you in the matter of 3 minutes, in 3 minutes, I'm just like, okay, and then this could happen, and then this could happen, and then you need to get a job, or maybe we just go and we buy like a store. Like, I was like, what were those, like those stores where you can go and ship products? The stores where you have like a P.O. box. It's like just like this random like mom and pop delivery store. Why I came up with this, I have no idea. And I'm like, so then you're gonna have to do that. And JD's like, no, I'll get a taco truck, and if we get a taco truck, you and Luna can come visit me, and I'll make you guys dinner. And I'm like, wait. In a matter of 3 minutes, our lives went from like all these things that we're gonna build, and now my husband's working at a taco truck. You guys, it happens, okay? You just let yourself go there, and Dr. Ethan says that serves nobody. Rumination leads to worry. Worry leads to catastrophizing what's not going to happen, which ends up manifesting your worst realities coming true. That is the power of the brain. Friends, choose a coach and not a critic. The second type of negative self-talk is the negative loop. He kind of mentioned this. So you're going to stay stuck in the stories that you're telling yourself. Like I could actually, for days, could have been stuck in like, I'm going to be like the wife of a taco truck owner. Nothing's wrong with that, but it's very different than the life we live right now. I could have stayed there. We have to actively choose something else so that we get, manifest, build, and take action towards that very thing. So you become consumed with the outcome you want to avoid. How about choosing being consumed with the outcome you so desire? It changes everything. Now, the third type of negative self-talk is self-beratement. This is where you become very critical of yourself. And when you're critical of yourself, it feels like death of 1,000 paper cuts. I was on a walk with my sister a couple days ago, and she said, no, Jasmine, that's a real thing. It's a form of torture. It exists. Death by paper cuts. It's the slowest form of death that's just tolerably painful, but could actually kill you. I thought to myself, that's self-beratement. It slowly kills a dream before the dream even had a fighting chance of taking off. Let's be real. Most website builders are great when you're starting out, but the second your business grows, you hit a wall. That's why I love Show It. It gave me total design freedom when I first started, but now, well, it's grown with me. It works seamlessly with WordPress, so I never have to worry about outgrowing my site. If you're ready for a website that works for you long-term, go to jasminestar.com/showit for a free 14-day trial and your first month free when you subscribe. I have good news. Okay, Dr. Ethan says that all three of those types, everything I just described, my life and journey of 1,000 paper cuts death, of owning a taco truck, of telling myself that I just wasn't smart enough to make it happen or good enough, or like there was a bar and I just couldn't meet it. Dr. Ethan says it's normal. That kind of conversation is normal. And what I would venture to say is all the entrepreneurs I am able to speak with and consult and help build businesses, dang, it's normal. So if it's normal, every day we have to make decisions. As entrepreneurs, we have to make big decisions with very limited information. And when we make decisions with limited information, what we want to do months later is tell ourselves how stupid that was or we should have done differently. Listen, did you do the best you could with the information you had? If you did, you can't ask yourself for anything more. And that's very hard. I understand it. I understand that we always want to make the right decision, but we have limited information. And so if we have limited information and we're making the best decisions that we can, then the only thing that we could do for ourselves is give ourselves grace and say, well, don't do that again. Get back on the horse and ride faster now. So we are the few and we are the rare and we are the crazy ones who decide to take a bet on ourselves, on our dreams. Most people don't do this. And statistics show that 90% of people who actually do decide to take a bet on themselves, their business is done within 7 years. So if you are taking a bet on yourself, why not? How not? Guess, build yourself up. If I'm going to give myself the best shot at making this thing work, am I going to make myself miserable? Am I going to talk so negatively to myself, or am I going to give myself the best stinking shot I have? I am telling you, the best athletes we have ever seen hardly have coaches that are on the sidelines screaming at them, telling them that they could do better, that they should do better. You want to know what the coach is doing? Silently watching and amending things slowly, one shot at a time. Dr. Ethan lists a lot of things in his book that he says, these are small things that we could start doing to change the narrative immediately. I believe there was a list of 12. What I want to do is I'm going to take a list of 3 things that I thought were perfect for entrepreneurs that you could take action on today to start easing some of the anxiety and changing your critic into a coach. Okay. Now, Dr. Ethan, I'd mentioned this before. He is a professor and researcher at the University of Michigan, and they conducted a study. And they conducted a study around what would be the most effective thing to reduce anxiety. Want to know what it is? Journaling. Journaling is the most effective way to reduce anxiety. And do you want to know the least used form, function, methodology of reducing anxiety? Journaling. It's the most effective and it's the least used. So they started trying to understand and research why, if it's so effective, do people not do it? What they discovered was that it made people feel too vulnerable. When you wrote it down, the words existed. And people would rather live in their head than see it written on a paper. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're struggling with a lot of anxiety or negative self-talk, the kindest thing that you could do for yourself. And he would even went as far as write, like, this doesn't have to be I'm spending 2 hours every day journaling. It's literally writing down everything and getting it on paper. Now, what he wants to say too is that journaling is not a magic pill. There's no such thing as a quick fix. You don't have anxiety or struggle with this type of worry and then the next day it's gone. Not at all. But what he talks about is mixing tools. Do you need to journal every day? No. Would it be good? Sure. But can you do it once in a while in addition to some of the other tips that he recommends? Let's just start there. Now, Dr. Ethan gives a very helpful prompt. So I'm going to share this with you as an entrepreneur. Write down your thoughts and feelings. He says, set a timer. Write down your thoughts and feelings for 15 minutes. Now, don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about punctuation. Don't worry about your penmanship. It's just get it out. And he says that you'll be able to write for a few minutes and you're going to struggle getting all of your negative worry, anxiety out. So 15 minutes is a long time because it feels like a lot more in your head than it's out on paper. So once you do that, he asks you to read it and then says, what's revealed? When your mind and hand starts going, the truth is revealed on the paper. And what he says is that those points acts as guides on the next decision to take. How we move past anxiety is to get out of the negative loop. When we journal, it's guidepost to what action to take next. And he said that after you journal, if you were to go back to your journal a couple days later, it's as if you're reading the story of somebody else. It's your story, and in the moment, it's real. You go back a few days later and you read it like it's a story of somebody else. And oftentimes, studies show that we can give advice or recommendations to other people better than we can give it to ourselves. It's called Solomon's paradox. So Solomon was a wise king from biblical allegories and stories. And people would travel the world to visit King Solomon for his wisdom. But if you were to look at King Solomon's life, it was speckled with mistakes and bad decisions and terrible outcomes. So Solomon's paradox means that we're able to give advice to others that we can't really give or understand ourselves. But there's an exception to this. If you were to write a letter to yourself when you were 18 years old, you could go back and give such rich wisdom because you've gone through it, and that version of you isn't the current version of you. So if we apply the same theory, what would it be like for you to write yourself a letter? Pretend you're 85 years old giving advice to yourself today. What would that look like? What would it feel like? What do you think that person who's writing this letter to you, what do you think they're going to say to you today? That is what Dr. Ethan advocates for. That is a Solomon paradox because we can give better advice to ourselves, looking at ourselves from a different point in time. Now, the first of these three tools that I wanted to dive into was, the first was journaling, and the second is distanced self-talk. Now, can you think of a time where you have coached yourself through something by using your own name? I did use an example before, like sometimes I'm at the gym. I was like, you got this, Jasmine, you got this. Distance self-talk works mostly because Dr. Ethan studied in his lab what I had just mentioned was the Solomon's paradox. It's that distance self-talk. Ever since reading this book a couple months ago, I found myself talking to myself in third person. And to be honest, I've been doing a lot of it. I think I've been doing okay, except last night, JD and I are driving home, and I turned to him, it's dark, and we're driving down the 405 throughway, and I feel like very tired, and I turned to him, and I'm like, I think I'm tired of talking so positively to myself. Like, I think I'm tired of being like, you got this, girl, fight on, it's another day, you got this, it wasn't what you wanted, but it was the lesson you needed, and I was like, I feel like I just want to stop with the hype and just be like, dang, girl, you did it. You hit your goals the way exactly you wanted them. And I was like, is there going to come a point in time where I could just take a break from the negative self-talk and then just spit out some facts? Like, look at what you did. Ain't that great? And he said, I don't think so. I think the ability for us to have distant self-talk in a very positive way is what continues to embolden our progress upwards and onwards. And I was like, it's too late. I don't want to have this conversation. I just want you to say like, yeah, girl, I want you to hit those 10-figure goals. Let's go back to Dr. Ethan. When you use distant self-talk, you're using language to automatically shift your perspective. When you say, hey, your name, when I'm saying Jasmine, you got this. Jasmine, dig down deep. Jasmine, do that last squat. Jasmine, don't close this computer until this funnel is done. Jasmine, that conversation that you have with a teammate. Jasmine, that SOP that you know you don't want to build, but you absolutely know that it should because it's contingent on the growth and scaling of this company. Jasmine, you're going to do this. I'm coaching myself. Same situation, different perspective. We can become our own coach. Now, the third most effective ways of talking ourselves back from anxiety. Now, just to recap, negative self-talk is normal. For entrepreneurs, I'm saying it is amplified. We are worried about a catastrophized future. So whenever this happens, Dr. Ethan says we can peel back that anxiety by 12 different things, 3 that I thought were very pertinent to entrepreneurs. Number 1 was journaling. Number 2 was distant self-talk. And number 3, rituals. So we have rituals for grieving when somebody dies. We have rituals when somebody gets married. We have rituals when babies get baptized. Rituals help us understand, document, and sometimes rituals help us cope. So he used this example of sometimes before the Olympics, or we see athletes, they will like scratch their ear twice and do some jumping jacks and open up their jaw a few times. And it's the ritual. They just do, like sometimes they do the sign of the cross. This is a ritual to help them cope with the uncontrollables. An athlete knows that they have trained their best, but But sometimes there are things that are outside of their control. So sometimes we could stave off anxiety by doing a ritual to help us say, I can control this part of my life. If you've been listening or watching the podcast for a while, you know that I have a morning ritual that I do every single morning without fail. It's about 15, 20 minutes. I wake up, I pray, I meditate, I read, and I journal. It's quick. Every single morning, because I don't know what the day is going to bring, but chances are it's going to bring a little bit of some like tough love. Sometimes I'm missing a tooth. I'm walking around with a punctured iron lung. Okay. That is running a business. Running a business is not easy. If it was easy, more people would do it. If it was easy, more people would stick with it. And guess what? They don't. If you're sticking with it, congratulations, you're in the freaking minority. And so if then that's the case, what ritual can you do to say, today is going to be hard, but I am going to push through? Today is going to be tough. I'm going to be tougher. Rituals help us cope with that. So what happens is sometimes a ritual can simply be to step out. And I will find myself sometimes when I'm really stressed out and I have a lot of anxiety, and let's just say like I have to pack for a trip. It never fails. When I am at the peak of stress with no time and I have to go on a trip, never fails. I need to organize my closet. Like the dumbest time, the dumbest idea. Oh no, I need to clean up my closet. It drives my husband crazy. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, it leads into it. My suitcase is there. I pull out clothes and then I see other clothes and I'm like, you know what? I hate these clothes. I haven't worn them. They don't fit. These are my one day jeans, like the one day that's never going to come. I was like, the one day I'm going to get back to these. And he's like, oh girl, it's been like 2003. It's probably not going to happen. Rude. You know what? Today's the day I'm going to give them up. Do you think I give them up? Absolutely not. What happens is when I read this book, I understood that on a subconscious level, my brain wanted to control what I was the most nervous about. Leaving when I'm very stressed. Leaving when I have very little time. So what do I want to do? I can control cleaning out my closet. And that's what I'll do. It becomes a control mechanism of a ritual. The minute I started realizing, hey, I'm using this to substitute what actually needs to be addressed here. Maybe I need a journal. Maybe I need to do deep breaths. Maybe I need to talk to myself. Maybe I need to write a note to myself or talk to me like I'm 85 years old and I'm having a conversation and I come across a letter and it's just like, you're doing a great job. Don't rush yourself. You're doing a great job. It will happen when it's supposed to. You're doing a great job. It's happening the way exactly as it should. Can you trust the process? So if you have found this podcast at all helpful, I take zero credit. Dr. Ethan, pick up the book, Chatter. And you know what I'm going to do right now? If you got to the end of this, felicidades, gracias. I'm going to call my shot. Dr. Ethan, one day you are going to come on the Jasmine Star Show. And the critic in me would say, Dr. Ethan's never going to come to Newport Beach to be on your podcast. But the coach is telling me, call your shot. Practice it. Wait. Build. And when he finds a perfect opportunity to be on the show, it will happen. But until that day comes, I'm reading this book. I'm sharing these notes with you to empower you to continue building your business despite the normalization of anxiety. We got this. We're going to choose better stories. We're going to have a voice that empowers us and doesn't destroy us. If you have found this episode at all helpful, please share it with a friend. Together, we get better and we get stronger. Thank you for watching and listening to The Jasmine Star Show.